over to our lecture today about the Seder. We advertised it as 39 ways to enhance your Seder, and we'll try to go through 39 different steps. Many of them are kind of similar, so don't hold it against me. But hopefully that after tonight, you'll have at least a couple of good ideas. That since if you're here, obviously you're telling me that you're running your own Seder, and in the past, Seders have been known to be long and boring, and people tend to get fidgety, and when do we eat, and how long is it going to take, and let's cut this story short, etc., all of that stuff. So I think that it behooves us to really do a little bit of research and to study how we can make the Seder more interesting so everybody can get a better appreciation of what's going to go on that evening, because the primary purpose of a Seder is one word called education. Education is the reason why we're sitting at the table on Passover night. Bar none. 4 times in the Torah, it says, you shall tell your children, you shall relate to your children will ask you. And every time the Torah tells us, and you should tell them, and you should teach them, and you should make them hear, and everything is all about education. Now, we know if you ever were a teacher, or everybody was a student once in their lives, that teachers can either inspire you to high heights or they can bore you to slumber. So if you're going to be the host and you're going to be the teacher for that evening, either you're going to have your guests excited, motivated, enthusiastic, or you're going to have them fighting like it used to happen in our house. My father, God bless his soul, may he rest in peace, was a very orthodox man. He saw the world in 2 colors, black and white. For him, when you sat down at the Seder, you had to tell the whole story, the whole Haggadah, starting from Heilach Ma'anya till the last possible word. My cousins, my sister, everybody else were not interested. They were interested in Jews were in Egypt, they got out, let's applaud, let's eat. That's it. What more is there to say? We know the story already. Me, I was the only son, and I was younger, and my father sat me next to him. I had to sit through the whole Haggadah and read it with him. I just felt bad for him because no one else was paying any attention. They were off talking, or they were in the kitchen eating. But he would sit there and say every single word, and he wouldn't change, no matter what you tried to say to him. I said, Dad, let's maybe talk a little about it. Hey, every single word. He had a special tune. It still rings in my ear. I even still say that God with his tune. That's the way it was. But if you want to really give a good experience to your guests, you're going to see the world in different colors, and you're going to try to do things that are going to enhance the situation and better the experience. So before we get into these 39 different ways that we can actually help make a Seder, there's one general rule that you have to know. One rule. And that is that most teachers will tell you, be prepared. I mean, you can't wake up on Saturday night at 8:15 and say, tonight is a Seder, I'm going to make it better. It doesn't work that way. If you're really serious into really making your Seder a very special event for your guests, you're going to have to be prepared. Meaning that from tomorrow on, after we go through this tonight, you're going to have to think about it, you're going to have to plan, you're going to have to see who's coming, what's coming, where they're coming from, and make preparations. Because it's going to be very different. For example, I know that David's mother comes from Eastern Europe, like my parents came from. Their experience is very different than if you have an intermarried couple. Mrs. Simber doesn't need, she already gone through everything and she knows. So to give her a good experience will be very different than if somehow you have a Gentile at the table that doesn't know, a Chacham from a Russia. And if you don't know a Chacham from the Russia, then you're in trouble. It's a whole different experience. So you have to know also who's at the table. So if you're prepared for my father, it's going to be very different than preparing for Sean Ferguson. Let's say, that's
Sean Green.
What?
Or Sean Green.
Or Sean Green.
Yeah.
So you have to also know, are there going to be children at the Seder, or they're not going to be children at the Seder? So you have to be prepared and aware of what your surroundings are. You have to think of yourself as a teacher. I mean, if you're teaching 12th grade history, it's very different than teaching 3rd grade history, and very different than teaching, college students or postgraduate students, PhD history. Everything, and a teacher that doesn't know her class, it's not going to work, right? So that's the first overall number one thing that you have to remember, all right? Again, so it's all about education and it's all about preparation. And then let's get into some of the details, okay?
Can we start from number 39? Get some jokes.
Okay, I'll tell you a joke, just to start off. But if you want to know jokes, I'll tell you, you do a little research, because again, it takes preparation, so you do a little research. You can go up to Google and just press in the word Seder, and they'll give you all a bunch of whole stories or everything. It all depends. There's an old expression, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. As much as you put in, that's as much as you're going to get out. I'm going to start you off with a story in honor of Renee. All right? In the olden days, when Jews lived in Poland, right? They lived in Poland, and basically the country was split up into what we call provinces. And the head of each province was called a poritz. A poritz was like a governor, and he basically ran his province. Now most of the time these poritzim, they were warriors, boorish people, not really educated, strong men, dictator type of guys. So they weren't really interested in running government, because to run a government you need to have someone that's willing to be patient, a guy that has to figure things out, how to build roads, maintain infrastructure. And these guys were boors. They were interested more in fighting and war. So once they won their principality, they needed someone that was going to run the daily affairs. Who better than to run a daily affairs than a Jew? Right? Because a Jew could be trusted. He's not going to steal because he's afraid the guy's going to hang him. Right? So generally every poritz had what they called in those days a mashke. Mashke is a vernacular, Polish vernacular for Moshe. So they called every Jew as Moshe. Doesn't matter if his name was Yeruchim, Gershon, Naphtali, Label, doesn't make a difference. To them they were all mashkes. Every Jew was a mashke. Okay, so this mashke ran, basically he was not the governor, but he was the administrator of the governor's territories. And in this particular territory, this mashke did very good. He was a very good manager, and he was a good businessman, and he made this guy a lot of money, and the guy was very happy with him. Poland, as you probably well know by now, is a very Catholic country. Extremely Catholic country. One of the most Catholic countries in the entire world, actually. And from time to time, you would have these bishops that were rabid anti-Semites that would come along. And in this principality, one day this bishop shows up, and he's one of these anti-Semitic bishops. He doesn't like the Jews. And it really bothers him, the relationship between the mashke and the poritz. So he goes to the poritz and he says to him, "Poritz, it's not right. You have a Jew running this. You're a Catholic, I'm a Catholic, this is a Catholic country. A Catholic should be running your affairs, not a Jew." This guy says, "What do you want?" He says, but every day he kept stressing and pounding on him and working on him and doing it over and over again. Until the poritz went over to Mashke and said, "Mashke, listen, you're a Jew, but we live in a Catholic country. Why don't you convert? What do you care?" "Oh, I can't convert." But as time went on, the poritz was more insistent and more insistent, until he gave him an ultimatum and said to him, "Listen, Mashke, either you convert or it's over." So he has no choice. He says he's going to convert to Catholicism. He goes home. He tells his wife Sarah, he says, "Sarah, I got some bad news. The poritz gave me an ultimatum today. We have to convert to Catholicism." "Okay, convert to Catholicism, convert to Catholicism." They went to the church. They were baptized. He's now a Catholic. He's a Catholic. Then he comes the next day, Catholic. At the moment that he converted, business went like this. Straight down. So the poritz, because he didn't have his heart in it anymore. He felt bad, he was dejected, depressed. He did something he didn't want to do, so he was only half-hearted into it. The poritz saw, he looked at the quarterly statement, and he saw that, that he was losing money, that a half-year boy was losing more money, and it's bleeding. He goes back to the Jews and says, I don't care, Catholic, Schmatholic, Jew, Shmoo, Boo, you go back to being Jewish, I don't care, I want my money. That's more important to me what religion you are. So Moshka heard, he can go back to being Jewish. He flies home. This is the greatest news because he's back being Jewish. He flies home to his wife. He throws open the door and says, Sarah, come down here, I got the greatest news. He says, Sarah, guess what? The parents, they told me we could reconvert, be going back to being Jewish. She's like this. Sad face. So he looks at her and says, Sarah, what's the matter? Why the sad face? I mean, don't you want to be Jewish? She says, yeah, but couldn't we wait till after Passover? I mean, I have to clean and all that. So if he tells you, let's just push it off a couple of weeks, because it becomes, if anybody who cleaned house for Pesach knows that, it's very tedious and very tiresome and it's hard. And if you go to my house right now, it looks like a bomb hit it. It looks like Beirut in the middle of the Civil War because everything is turned over and there's Pesach didn't come. But that's part of the experience. Part of the experience is to house cleaning and everything is fresh and everything is new. All right. So there's one. Is that okay, Mr. Dr. Kern? Is that? Okay, that's a good one. You like it. All right. Now there's a bunch of other corny ones we'll have over the time, but we'll start off, by just saying that when you open up the Haggadah, first thing you need to do is to have universal Haggadahs. Don't have a Haggadah where one starts page 4, the other one page 8, the other one page 13. One of them you got from Vaughn's, the other one you got from Rouse, and the other one you got from here, and then you got a few more from there. Get everyone the same Haggadah and have them on the same page. So when you say page 10, everybody is at the 4 questions. Not, you know what, you have to turn page. It's the worst. I did that one year here because I was cheap. Be honest with you, I didn't want to spend big money, so I got half Vaughn's and half Ralph's, thinking it would be the same Haggadah. Little did I know, one of them is printed by Maxwell House, the other one is printed by Nestle's. So there were 2 different printings. So I kept saying, okay, page 47 for the Vaughn's, page 57 for Ralph's. It kept going back and forth. It didn't work very well. So don't be like me, spend a couple of bucks, go wherever you have to go, or if you're going to go to one place, stick to Vaughn's. Get all the Maxwell House Haggadahs and just keep it for year after year. Now, another important thing is if you're going to have the typical American over to your house, not Israeli, that reads Hebrew, get English Haggadahs. If you don't get English Haggadahs, forget about it. I mean, the people are going to sit there and they're going to look like this, like this, like this, like that, and they're going to get, in 5 seconds, they're going to be bored out of their heads. So I don't have to tell you, get English translations on the Haggadahs. That is a very important thing. Again, I talk from experience. When I grew up, who needed English Haggadahs? My father needed an English translation. He could hardly speak English, my father. We had only Hebrew. So anytime someone who knew nothing, my sister's boyfriend, let's say, who knew nothing, too bad. You sit there like a klutz. Okay? We have an expression, a yovan in sukkah. It's like a Greek in a sukkah. All right? I don't know why I have that ended up. A Greek in a sukkah. But that's the expression of not knowing anything. A yovan in a sukkah. So, okay? So you have a Greek guy sitting in a sukkah. He knows nothing about what's going on in the sukkah. And that's the way my father felt about this yovan, about this guy, the boyfriend. And he would sit there and in 5 minutes he would be already wandering, eating. Right? So get universal to everybody at the same Haggadah and get English Haggadahs. Now, there's an exception. If, of course, you have Russian guests, get them a Russian translated Haggadah. Don't be lazy. If you have a Persian or if you have a Russian or if you have other nationalities, almost every language is translated by the Haggadah by today. Because, it's a well-known story. Don't be lazy. Go out there and do it for them. All right? This is just common sense. This is just common sense. Now,
Where do you buy these?
where do you buy the Haggadahs? You don't have to buy them. I'm telling you, go to any store. They have plenty of free Haggadahs.
Even at the trade.
You go anywhere. Go to Vaughn's, go to Ralph's. Stacks and stacks of Haggadahs. Yeah! I go on Erev Pesach. I go from store to store, picking them up because I don't want them to throw them in the garbage.
You went to my store.
Did I? No. They're gone? already? Yeah, but you never know. I haven't done it this year yet. But I'll go on Friday because I don't want them throwing it in the garbage. Because what they do is they take these hundreds of avocados and they'll throw them right in the garbage. They don't need it. Because the manager's a yavam. He doesn't know about the sukkah. He's a yavam in the sukkah. So he doesn't know anything. So that's the story. So when you buy your grape juice, or you buy your matzah, you buy your gefilte fish, go up there and say, like a four. And they don't care. Take 10, 15. They don't care. They get it for free anyway from Maxwell House. Maxwell House supplies all of these haggadahs, and they interested, and you use them. So at least everybody will have the same haggadahs. Because if they're not on the same page, forget about it. Then it becomes a klula, and you're crazy. Now, you're ready to start the Seder, okay? Your guests have come, you're there, you're at the things. It's always good and very, very important for number one, and that's why I put it as number one, most important, is have a guest at the Seder. Why do I say this? Is because it enhances your experience a trillion times. Now, it's great to have the family, you have your children there and your siblings there, but if you have a guest, it enhances your experience a million times. It is a lesson and education for everybody around, because your children see that you've extended yourself to somebody else, the guests see you've extended yourself to somebody else, and the first thing we're going to say after Kiddush, after the wine, the first thing we're going to say is the halach ma'anya. This is the bread of affliction which our forefathers ate in Egypt. Everybody who was needy, please come in. Now, you're sitting at the Seder, and you only have you and your children, and you lock the door. And you're saying this, so your family knows that you really don't mean it, because you won't open up the door and extend a hand to a stranger. So what are you saying? So you're saying something you really don't mean, and children and everybody knows that that's going to be the case. So the first thing is, you just know that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of Jewish people that need a place to go for a Seder. I met a guy today. Now, a very wealthy guy, runs a big business, doesn't have where to go for a Seder. Nowhere. His family will make a Seder, he will make a Seder, and believe me, if you thought about it for 10, 15 minutes, who you work with, who your patients are, who your customers are, who your friends are, you will notice that there is somebody out there, somebody who doesn't have a Seder. And by bringing a person in, that's going to force you. You see, if you have your family around and you could sit in your gatkis, you could sit in your underwear, and you could do whatever you want, and you could feel at home. If you have a guest there, you're not going to sit in your underwear. You're going to be in your best behavior. You're going to prepare for the Seder. It's going to give you an incentive to do something and enhance the Seder, which you wouldn't do before. Because that's the way it goes, right? Think about it. The times you have Friday night dinner with your family, you have one experience. You sit there, in 5 minutes you're sleeping, and you don't care because you know. But if you have guests at your Seder, then already you have to be best behavior, you have to dress nicely. So it behooves everybody, as Jews, not only to make them feel comfortable, but it does so much for us when we are able to extend and open up our home for somebody else. And here it's not hard to do that. This is not like everybody has a Seder. Everybody knows somebody that could use a hand, to a Seder.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
we opened the door for Elijah and John Dewey, my son's friend, came in and joined us for the Seder.
There you go.
I mentioned it is all right to invite a non-Jew to your Seder too.
You know what? It's a very good question. That's a very good question.
Because of what they say there.
Yeah, and it's a question whether, but in America today, who cares who you invite? But in the olden days, I'll tell you right now, in the olden days, they would refrain from inviting non-Jews to a Seder. They would not invite a non-Jew. It would be exclusively a Jewish Seder, but in America today, it's open up for anybody. You could invite anybody to the Seder. It doesn't make a difference. And this is just to give you a little bit of an insight. When you have a guest there, and you're talking about the 4 sons, right? We talk about just a little insight in the Haggadah. We talk about the 4 sons. What are the 4 sons? The wise son who knows everything and he asks his dad, why are we doing this? The wicked son who asks, why are we doing this? You see, the difference, just parenthetically, the difference between the wise son and the wicked son is a very thin line. They say the same words, except the song is very different. See, the wise son says, Dad, why are we doing it? That's with respect. The wicked son says, why are we doing this? Same words, except he sings it differently. The whole attitude is completely changed. Then you have the simple son and the one that doesn't know how to ask. Right? So you have the 4 sons sitting around the table. The Rabbi once in one of his talks around Passover said, you know what? There's a 5th son that the Haggadah doesn't mention. Who's the 5th son? The 5th son is the son that's not even there. That doesn't even bother coming to the table. You see, the 4 sons that show up, they have an advantage, at least even the wicked son. The wicked son, at least, his mother called him up and said, come to the Seder. He comes there. He might sit like this, angry, and he folds his arms, and he has an attitude, and why should he be there? But he comes. The 5th son is invisible. He doesn't even come. And in America, unfortunately, where in Europe the 5th son was a minority. Yeah, you had a 5th son, but in America there's so many 5th sons. And that's what I mean by inviting someone to a Seder, because they just simply don't know. You see, just to emphasize this point just a little bit stronger. In the Talmud, there is a concept of a mummer. A mummer is someone that's called an apostate. We don't really know many apostates. We know people that are ignorant. We should never confuse ignorance for apostasy. See, because ignorance is people that just don't know anything about Judaism. And I'm sorry to say this, but that's the majority of American Jews. They don't really know much about Judaism. They didn't have much of an upbringing about Judaism. They know nothing. An apostate is someone who knows about Judaism, but still rebels against this. In Europe, you used to find more apostates. In Israel, for example, you find apostates because they know, but they reject it. They reject it. So in the Talmud, there are 2 types of apostasy. One is mumar lahachis. One is an apostate for the simple reason to rebel. For example, what would he do? He would have a sandwich of bread and bacon on Passover. Even though bread is forbidden and bacon is forbidden, he doesn't. You know what? Just to show him, he'll sit on his front door. He'll sit on his porch while we're all coming to show together for the Seder. He's going to sit there with a big sandwich of bread and bacon, and he's going to eat it and with a beer, because beer is also chametz. And we're going to say to him, why are you doing this? And he's going to say, you know why? Because this is foolish. The whole Torah is foolish. The Torah is nothing. And I'm going to show the whole world that I'm better than everybody. This is someone that does it lahachis. He does it for the sake of rebellion. Then there's an apostate, l'teyavon. He is a mummer. He's an apostate only for self-aggrandizement, for self-satisfaction. What does he do? He doesn't care whether he eats matzah, he eats bread. Whatever is more convenient for him, he'll do. If matzah is more convenient, fine. If bread is more convenient, fine. He doesn't have an issue with the Torah itself. He just is a simple chazer. That's all he is. He's a chazer. And whatever is going to please him, he's going to do. So if there's a kosher restaurant here on the corner, he'll go to eat kosher. Why not? He doesn't care about it. If there's an In-N-Out, he'll get the In-N-Out because he's only doing things that gives him pleasure. And if he has to extend himself, forget about it. See, a woman lahachis, the rebellion, he'll never go to the kosher restaurant. He'll drive 5 miles to eat at the In-N-Out burger. If he lived in Borough Park in New York, there's only kosher restaurants, he'll leave Borough Park just to get the chazer, just to get the bacon. The one who does it for self-satisfaction, he doesn't care. Who's worse? Which guy is worse off? So in the Talmud it says that the rebellious guy is worse, because him you can never trust because he does it for rebellion's sake. But really, if you think about it in a spiritual sense, the rebellious guy has an advantage. You know why? Because he's got a fire burning in his belly. He has something that is bugging him. And in his stomach, things are churning. And he wants to prove a point. If we're able to sit down with him and to turn him, to change his attitude, we can save him. When I mean save us, we can turn him around and embrace Judaism because there's an ember, there's a fire burning. The guy that's just doing it for self-satisfaction, he has no ember doing it. He, no matter what you say to him, just rolls off him because all he thinks about is how he's going to get pleasure. That's all he cares about. So here, what we're talking about is the guy who's sitting at the table, the son. What is he? He's a mumar lahachis. He's there with a fire burning. What do we need all of these things for? This is dumb. This is stupid. And who hasn't said that in Judaism every once in a while? We all say that because at least he has an attitude problem. The other guy is not even at the Seder. So this is even for us who are traditional and we have a Seder, it even is more of a responsibility, puts the onus on us to reach out to bring someone else in. Okay? So it was a long number one, to have guests at your Seder. If somehow you can't have your own Seder, or you don't want to go through the barter, then I put down, join a community Seder, or have people join a community Seder. Because at a community Seder, there's a little bit more fun, there's a little bit more action. You're not confined to a small dining room with 8 to 10 people. You can do something at a community Seder. Okay. Number 3 is use English Haggadahs. We all agree on that, right? That's a no-brainer. Now, 4 is interesting because 4 takes you from being an observer to a participant, right? Everybody at the Seder should do something. If the person is sitting there and is not doing anything, you're asking for trouble. Because no matter what's going to happen, even if you have English, you all have the same Haggadot, and everything is the same, if the person does not feel that he is part and parcel of it, he's going to feel like an outsider. So I say, make sure, unless you're not running a community Seder, which doesn't lend itself to everybody reading a different piece, because there's a lot of people there. But if you're doing a family Seder, and you have 10 or 15 people around the table, and every one of them could read, but you have to prepare beforehand. You got to pick pieces and think about this before. Who am I going to ask? At the moment, if you know that you have someone that's very reluctant, because sometimes you have Uncle Harry that's going to read no matter what and tell us dumb, stupid stories no matter what. And every Pesach you hear the same old stories of how in 1920 they had to walk 6 miles without shoes to go to school, and today's generation is a bunch of weaklings and sissy men, and they were tough in the olden days, and no, I have to listen to Uncle Harry's stories no matter what. So he's going to read, but then you have Cousin Sue, who's very shy and she doesn't want to, so you call Cousin Sue and say, listen, Cousin Sue, I want you to have a good experience at the Seder, and I want you, we're preparing a piece, and I'm telling you I have a piece, and if you need to fax it to her beforehand, fax it to her so she could get comfortable with reading the piece of the Haggadah, and it will tell her that she's part and parcel of the family. Versus, Harry reads, and this guy reads, never reads, and we skip Sue, and we go on to Louis, and we go on down the line. You don't want that. You want everybody to be able to participate in the Seder. But it takes preparation. It takes thinking. Who do you have? Sometimes when I see kids in Hebrew school, some kids you tell them, who wants to participate? And the 6 kids are jumping like this. Then there's kids, excuse me, Sherry, I'd like to participate. What? Who? When? What? Who? I don't want to do it. No, forget about it. I'm not doing it. But if you prepare beforehand and make them feel comfortable, they're going to have a tremendous time. The more you allow people to participate in the Seder, even though I know that people are going to say, but it's going to take longer, Rabbi, and everything. Listen, the idea is you get them once a year. Once a year. You want to have them for a cocktail party? Throw a cocktail party. You can do that next Saturday night. You can do it any time during the year. You can do it. But at a Seder, think about the opportunity of teaching them about Judaism. It will enhance your feeling about the Seder, and it will give them a greater appreciation for the Seder as well. Nothing to talk about. Now, children. Children are our future. Nothing to talk about. Now, I know that many people at the Seder not going to have any children. They're mostly adults, and it's a little easier with adults because children have the patience of a fly on acid. So you have to think about this. They don't have patience to sit. And those that have children who are grown up already just have to remember the yesteryear of when they were little, and they were running all over the place and all over the place. But the 4 times that it says in the Torah, it always refers to the children. Always. You should tell your children. You know why? Because if you tell your children when they're children, they'll tell their children when they're children. But if we do, we're going to make this an adult event, and we're going to forget about the children, then don't think about the fact that when they grow up, they're not going to make a Seder. Why? Because all they're going to remember is that we were excluded. Now, I learned this the hard way. And I'll tell you a story with the Dia Hava Uvde. By me this happened, so I don't have to talk about the Baal Shem Tov or any other person, because I made once a major blunder. And I'll tell you what it was. Before we started coming to Shul by the Shore, we used to have community seders in my house near the shore on Atlantic Avenue. And there was, we were able to have 20 people, 30 people, okay. One year my son Label, who many of you know, he's 14 years old. This was maybe about 6 years ago. He was 8 and he learned the questions at the Hebrew Academy in Yiddish. He was very proud of it, and he walked around with the paper for weeks before studying it. Yiddish is not his first language, but they pushed him, and he knew the 4 questions in Yiddish. And he couldn't wait for the night that it was going to be a Seder, and he was going to shine with the questions in Yiddish. Okay? The Seder night comes, and and Label prepared himself a chair right next to mine, and he put the pillow there because he could lean back on the wine, and he had the whole thing going with his papers over there, and I was very proud of him, and great. Well, make a long story short, we had a few extra guests that came, and I thought, as the rabbi, I wanted everybody to feel comfortable, so who did I sacrifice? My son Label. I told him, Label, you know what, why don't you give this guy a chair? We'll come to you. We'll get to you. So, he picked up his pillow, he picked up his agenda, he moved to the back of the room and everything, and some guest sat next to me. I don't even remember who it is. I'm sure he doesn't even come around, anymore. And, Otto Steve, okay, he says, no, it wasn't, Steve. And everything was going on, and, and the 4 questions came along, and the 4 questions went by, and the whole agenda went by, and Label never got to say his 4 questions. Okay? And at the end of the Seder, my son is not a complainer, he's not a crier that's going to fall on the floor, but you could just see his bitter disappointment that he didn't have this opportunity, that he practiced. So on the next day, I had an opportunity to speak from the pulpit. It's not easy, for someone to open up their hearts and say, I sinned, and I have erred, and I asked for forgiveness, but it was wrong. It was just simply wrong. Because we sacrifice our kids, if you're certainly in the rabbinic field, and we sacrifice it for no good reason. They're not sacrifices. They're not sacrifices. Sometimes you have to put away everybody else for the sake of your family. So children, they're the most important part of the Seder. There's no ands, if, and buts. If you look in the Torah, time after time again, it's all geared towards the children. And I'll ask you a question. We have at the Seder, we're talking about now the Seder. The first step is Kaddish. We make the Kiddush. Urchatz, we wash our hands. Karpas, we dip the greens in salt water. Why? Why do we do this? And then there's a reason why the Talmud gives why we dip. This is not the bitter herbs. We know why we eat the bitter herbs, because of the bitterness of our lives in Egypt. We know why we eat the matzah. Why do we dip the greens? And the greens could be parsley or an onion or a potato, whatever. Why do we dip it in salt water? And there's the reason that the Talmud says, Sherry, you want to see? No. The reason why the Talmud says to do it is because it encourages the children to ask questions. That's it. That's the only reason. There's no biblical reason. There's no Talmudic reason. There's no rational, there's no historical or cultural reason. The reason that was instituted is to arouse the sensibility of the children, to arouse their curiosity, and to say, Daddy or Mommy or whoever was needed, why are we doing it tonight? Why? And that's a victory. The moment you're able to engage the children, the guests, into a discussion, that, my friends, you have begun to run a beautiful Seder. There's interest. But if you're looking around the room and everybody is looking at you like they'd rather be in Honduras, fighting in the jungle, and you know that you've lost them. You've lost them. So try to be cognizant of the fact that you are running a Seder, and you have sometimes, it's tough, because on one hand you have adult guests, and then you have children. Do not sacrifice the children because the adults are impatient. Too bad. They need to learn. You have to sit there and you have to endure, because teach the children according to their ways. Because one thing that we're giving back, it's going to get too hot one day. King Solomon tells us, educate the children according to their ways, because even when they get old, they will not leave it. And that's the way it has to be. So just tell the adults beforehand, even if you have to make a call, that's part of the preparation, that you should know there'll be a number of children at the Seder, and the first part of the Seder we are dedicating to educating our children. You know, they're not going to want to sit anyways too long, but at least for the first 10, 15 minutes, while you make the Kiddush, while you do the dipping, while you ask the 4 questions, you've got to give attention to the children. And then children also. It's a big difference, a 3-year-old or a 14-year-old. But everybody needs to realize that. That's the one. Now, talk about engagement, okay? What you want to do is sometimes you have to put away the Haggadah. You know, we want to stick to the story, but we have to put it away. You have to make the Haggadah relevant today. I mean, the fact that Abraham went down to Egypt and Sarah was there and Terach, it's great, it's fine, it's beautiful, our history is wonderful. But there are times when you have to just put the book away and engage the people in current affairs discussions, because they have to see the relevance of what's happening with the story of Passover today. Now, the easiest way is to deal with what's going on in Israel, because everybody is going to have an opinion. Everybody who opens up a newspaper, watches a television, is going to have an opinion about Israel. Someone should give back the land, should not give back the land. Israel should withdraw, should make more peace, they should be more soft, hard line. Everybody's going to say something about Israel. And the more you engage them, even if it gets lively, there's nothing wrong with a lively discussion. Jews have been known to have more than one lively discussion in their history. We've always been known to be good debaters and good idea people. So bring them in, talk about it. Talk about the relevance of other issues that deal with Exodus. The Russian Jews, for example. Now today it's not as a hot issue as it was 10 years ago. When the Jews were coming out of the Soviet Union, you could easily open up the Seder with a discussion. Look what's happening today. So it's literally a modern miracle. Whereas Pharaoh enslaved the Jews, Stalin and his henchmen enslaved the Jews in Russia. And look what's happening today. God has opened up the doors and everybody's going to Israel. It's still relevant. It's still, if you talk about that experience and talk about present day situations, people are going to be more willing to engage. If you want to talk about Jacob and Esau and Terah and Abraham and all of that stuff, it's a nice story. Yeah, everybody knows the story. We got out 10 plagues. You know, and there's so many situations in the world. There's so many things that are going on in the world right now where people have an opinion. It just takes a little bit of coaxing to get it out of them, and you will see that the table is going to be part of what the Seder is all about, discussing issues that affect Jews in the world today. Now, if you have a very liberal crowd, or maybe people who are not Jewish, who Israel is not as emotional attachment to them, there's other things. I mean, you could talk about Darfur. I mean, what's happening in the Sudan today. God only knows that we have more than one place in the world where they're enslaving and they're killing people. So if you want to have to extend it to make it more universally accepted or more of a global issue, do that. But remember to engage people in discussions. That is going to enhance the affair. So you have to use seichel, use common sense. I know we want to get through the Haggadah, and I know that we want to read from page 4 to page 47. But sometimes, you know what? Put aside the Haggadah and say, you know what? Look what which we read now. Jacob went down to Egypt, and Theodor Herzl went down to Palestine. Okay, to my colleagues in Chabad, I'm not equating Theodor Herzl with Jacob, okay? I just want to make that clear. Jacob is one of the patriarchs in the Torah who we hold at the highest esteem. Theodor Herzl was a secular Jew, but nonetheless, in my opinion, Theodor Herzl was an agent of the Almighty to come and create something very special. Whether he was religious or not, that's his business. But that's my feeling. I said this Saturday night at a meeting. When I got the heretic from Long Beach, Herzl, he's a Herzl lover. Yeah, what can I tell you? I'm a Herzl lover. I believe the State of Israel is a very special event in the course of Jewish history. And I believe in 1948 we had a tremendous miracle happen to us. And it would not have happened, large part, if it wouldn't have been for this guy, Theodor Herzl. Now maybe it could have happened otherwise. Maybe some other guy would have come around, Shlomo Rabinowitz, who knows who could have come around. Yankelevich. But you know what? Waiting for Yankelevich, Theodor Herzl was the one that organized the World Zionist Congress in 1897, fought for the Jewish World Congress, and was able to push the agenda forward. Push it forward. Now, whether he was religious or not religious, he put on film, not put on film, he ate Chazar and Yom Kippur, that's between him and the Almighty. You know what? He wasn't the first Jew that didn't put on film, that did a good thing in Judaism. Right? He did, that's the way it was. But, if you say this in the wrong circle, God forbid, we didn't know about this today, but if I had known about this, we would have organized and show something. Today at Cal State Long Beach, they had a member of the Natura Carta was here. Natura Carta is my sworn enemies. These are my sworn enemies, because these are Orthodox religious Jews. I've spoken from them in the pulpit beforehand, who side with the Palestinians and claim that Israel has no right to exist. And the Muslim Student Union brought them to Cal State Long Beach today, one of the members to speak. I didn't know about this, and I know that when we've organized the show, and I don't know what I would have done to them, because these are people who I believe are worse than the Palestinians. Worse than the Palestinians. Why? Because the Palestinians, no, that's what they are who they are. I'm not making a judgment. But these are Jews who are quislings to our cause. These are Jews that side with our enemy and aid and abet our enemy. To me, there's no worse sin than doing that. It's like someone in 1940 will be promoting Hitler here in this, in this country. And it just bothers me to know, just bothers me. And that question could come up at the same, you never know who could ask that question, because, they're in the news. There's about 8 members of this whole Natura Carta, but they do a lot of, rattling and publicity. So, it just makes me sick. It just makes me sick, because there's so few of us in the world, and we have so many enemies, as is, we meet from within ourselves, and worse, okay, because there are secular Jews. They're also enemies of Israel, such as a well-known professor, Noam Chomsky, in MIT, is a well-known anti-Zionist, an enemy of Israel, an enemy of the United States, and an enemy of Israel. But okay, so he comes from a secular perspective, it's one thing, communist, whatever he is. But when a Jew walks in with a full beard, and a stridor, and pays, and tzitzis, and says that I am speaking for the Lord, that I can't take. That crosses the line for me. I mean, after what we've seen in the Holocaust, I can't take it. But I mean, here's a good discussion right off the bat. We already could go into a 15 discussion, and that leads us to number 7. To discuss the situation of Jewish communities around the world. I mean, there are plenty of places that that are having seders. Today it's a little different in the world than it was 20 years ago when communism dominated the world. Yeah, a lot of places like in Russia they have seders. Kathmandu has a huge seder. The seders all over the world. But not everybody is as lucky as we are. Not everybody. We think about it, and I talk to my children about our experiences here in the United States. We're spoiled. I'm naive. I think about my children. They're 30 times more naive than I am. They think everybody in the world is like this. You go to the store, you buy chicken, you buy beef, you buy roast beef, you buy corned beef, you have 20 different types of beef, all the matzah you need, all the wine you need, all the charesis you need. We think that there's no end to this. No shortage whatsoever here in the United States, and everybody in the world lives like this, but it's not true. We know that there are places where Jews are and don't live like this. It's still dangerous to be a Jew. It's still tough to be a Jew. In Russia, it's still tough to be a Jew. Even with the freedom, there's no money there. It's hard to make a Seder. It's, in Israel, and nothing to talk about Jews that are still living in Arab countries. There's still community in Morocco, and the Jews in Iran. I mean, imagine if you were today living in Iran, a Jew. And there are many Jews still living in Iran. In Afghanistan, I think there's one Jew left. The other Jew died recently. I think half the community, just 50%. But Jews, over the world don't have the same experiences. And if we extend it out to non-Jews, look at what's happening in the world. So we need to reinforce that idea that we're in America and we're lucky, and we should never forget about it. We thank the government, and believe me, we should wake up every day singing the Star-Spangled Banner, because we live in a tremendous country that allows us to do all of these things. And whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, a Green Party, an independent, it doesn't make a difference. We still live in one of the greatest country on the face of God's green earth. Aid has always used the opportunity to enhance Jewish values. We talk about Jewish values, visiting the sick, caring for the poor, God forbid at a funeral, comforting the dead. These are values that have been with us for centuries and centuries. Since Abraham in the Bible, we talk about Abraham going down to Egypt. But this is the same Abraham that 3 days after circumcising himself, 3 days, he was already out there looking for visitors in the heat. We know them stories in the Bible, that then he was out there and he wouldn't let them go past and all of these things. And look, these are our values. These are what makes us who we are today. Besides the fact that we're religious and we keep Shabbos and kosher, but there's certain social values that we hold near and dear. And this is a time that we can once again reinforce all of these the issues. Yeah, we all know number 9, at the breaking of the afikomen should be hidden by an adult, and the children should have to find it. This is a kind of a game that was started, it used to be in my days where the adults hid it. And sorry, the children hid it, and the adults had to find it. That's the way it was played when I was a kid. My father went to wash, we grabbed the afikomen and we hid it, and we wouldn't return it until, we solicited him, or actually it wasn't called a solicitation, this is what it was called, a shakedown, and then we shook him down for either a bicycle or something, whatever, a watch, whatever we wanted in those days. But I'm glad that it changed. I'm glad it changed that where the adults hide it, and the children have to find it, because the previous Rabbi, in one of his letters, says it's not good to have the children steal the afikomen. Just teaching the word stealing is something not negative about it, having the children steal, because then you extend it, and it gets me kind of confusing the values. So today it's much better.
Going to number 8, talking about Jewish values. My Seder, I got 18 people. 10 aren't Jewish, the other 6 don't care, it's just a few that are Jews here.
Right.
Neil.
Right.
So when I discuss Jewish values and the importance of Pesach and how it matters to our values here, the faces are like this, they're dead faces. I feel uncomfortable discussing certain values. I like talking about Jewish values, that's one of my favorite subjects.
Right.
But it's like I'm getting nowhere. Maybe it's in my own head. I feel out of place in my own home doing that, which I don't want to feel that way. So I better think of something else to do.
But if you use this, and forget it, drop the word Jewish. Think about the word values. Okay? Think about values. We talk about a lot in America about values. What does it really mean? Values are only good if you use them. So I could talk about being a good person from today till a million years from now. It won't do me any good, and I will not be a good person until I act on those values. I may say I would love to visit the sick, and I'll be a good guy, and I'll feed the homeless, and I'll volunteer. But until I do that, the values are meaningless. So it doesn't make a difference if you put the word Jewish or not Jewish in front of it. It is really a statement and a testament upon who you really are. What are you? Because we are faced every day with challenges, right? Our values are challenged every single day. When we have an opportunity of extending ourselves, we can either do this and say, well, it's not for me, I don't want to get involved, or we're one that jump into the fray. Those are things, where are you going to be? And it's interesting, because this past week, the Torah portion, I'm just getting off the subject just for a moment. The Torah portion was about leprosy. But we know it's not really physical leprosy. We talk about a spiritual ailment that was given by God on the people visited for slander or for boastfulness, haughtiness, arrogance, robbery. There were 7 sins that you possibly could get this leprosy, this ailment, this rash on your hand or on your body. Now, if you were a leper, you were excluded from the community. You literally had to leave your home and go to the outskirts, the netherlands of civilization, and sit there till you were healed. Who diagnosed this? A Kohen. A Kohen. You had to go to a Kohen. The greatest rabbi who was not a Kohen could not adjudicate and could not render a decision. You had to go to a Kohen. And a Kohen looked at it, and he looked at it and he studied it, and if it was inconclusive, he would wait another 7 days to see how it grew, whatever it was, something like that, and then he would render a decision. Well, he'd either say it is leprosy or it's not leprosy. The only one that the Kohen could not render a decision on was himself. If he was stricken with this rash, he had to go to another Kohen. Now, if you think about it, it doesn't make really much sense, because on one hand, You say if the greatest rabbi, you take King Solomon, the wisest man, he himself could not render a decision on his own leprosy. He had to go to a Cohen. That same Cohen who could render a decision for King Solomon couldn't render a decision for himself. He had to go to someone else. Why? And the answer is very simple. Because since it is not a physical malady, it's not an ailment where, like, for example, I belong to Kaiser. Kaiser really doesn't care about the morals and ethics of its patients. You could come in, you could be a good guy, you could be a bad guy. It doesn't care. It treats you. It treats your ailment, it gives you medication, go home. What happened over here? When you went to the Cohen and showed him your rash, what really was he assessing? He was assessing who you are. He was assessing your character. And do you have any character flaws? Because if that leprosy was impure, if you were really a leper, what does that say about you? You're a slanderer, you're a gossiper, you're a gossip monger, you're just a bad person. So, see, someone else's flaws I can see very well. Right? Ah, yes, of course, I see your flaws. Everybody's flaws are easy to tell, because a splinter in my eye is a beam in your eye. Right? Because me, I'm a great guy. I have no character flaws. That's why the Cohen, as smart as he was, had to go to someone else. Because you could never see the character flaws in yourself. You have to have someone else diagnose it for you. So when we talk about value, Steve, we don't have to use it in the context of Jewish. We just have to put a challenge to everybody at the table. What kind of a person are you? Are you the kind of a person that, and make them think about it, are you the kind of a person that in a time when you're tested are going to be able to step forward and do the right thing? Or are you going to be like many people, just take a back seat? You know, and this way you're going to engage them into start thinking. Now, when they start smelling the chicken soup and the kremslach and the kangol and the this and the that, of course, it gets hard to concentrate on values, but that's the whole idea, is to try to elicit from them something. And values is such a common idea that everybody claims. Very few people are going to stand up and say, I'm a bad person. I'm a bad person. You know, I mean, but, so, you know, you have to just be creative in every situation, you know. Talk about, you know, whatever needs to be done. You know, 10 is, I put in there for the environmentalists. Paul?
5 minutes.
5 minutes to go? Oh, okay. During the dipping of the vegetables, talk about the present environmental situation. You know, I put that in for the environmentalists in the group, just in case there's somebody here from the Green Party who, you know, was going to get up and say, Rabbi, you're not talking anything about the environment. The ozone layer. So, you know, with the vegetables, the earth, talk about Mother Earth, mention Mother Jones Magazine, you know, all of those things, the Sierra Club, you know, whatever you have to do, PETA, you know, whatever you have to mention to make the environmentalists around your table, you know, comfortable, you know, do that. Talk about, you know, where vegetables come from, where food comes from, how we have to honor the environment, how Mother Earth is very angry when we destroy it. Talk about the terrible lumberjacks up in Oregon that cut down those trees, you know, whatever you have to do. You know, the tree huggers, we love all those people, you know, of course, until it comes to, we need paper to write, so we hate the tree huggers, we want people to cut down trees, but, you know, nonetheless, this is another kind of an opportunity where if you have around your table these greenies, as we call them, you also want to talk about them, about, you know, what do you call that organization that surrounds these whaling boats, Greenpeace, talk about Greenpeace, talk about the environment, I mean, talk about, you know, just, you know, about different situations. I mean, just another way to enhance. Now, if you don't have any greenies around your table, skip number 10, obviously. You don't have to talk about the environment. You know, who cares? If you happen to have the president of Scott Paper Company, you don't want to bring up the environment. Trust me, you want to talk about how great it is that, you know, that we have paper in America and how everybody has enough toilet paper to go forever. Because you're going to need it after the Seder. All right? Yeah. Number 11 should have been really earlier up, because have everyone introduce themselves and talk about a special Jewish experience. Now, Steve brings up a good point. You might have around the room, might have some non-Jews, so if you say, can you please tell about your special Jewish experience, and the guy named is Sean Ferguson, who's Irish, what?
I went to Philadelphia, that's my Jewish
Yeah, my Jewish experience, I went to Catella Deli, or, you know, I once was invited to bar mitzvah or bris, and, you know, something like that, that's going to be that. But, you know, of course, then you could talk about some religious experience, or some spiritual experience, or some, you know, special experience that you've had in life. I mean, you have to know who your crowd is, but it's very important to have people introduce themselves, especially if even if it's your own personal family. You might forget the name of your kids or someone once in a while. You also have to have your kids introduce themselves, where they've been the past year, what they're doing, who's doing, what's doing, where they're going, where they're coming from. You know, do all of that stuff, and you can make light of it, and you know, and all of that stuff, and then there you go. There you go. So, you know, you already have something to talk about. 12 and 13 really are the same. You tell Passover stories or talk about Passover in other communities. If you go to Google and you Google in, let's say, Passover around the world. I didn't do this, but I'm certain probably if you did that, you would probably get some interesting stories. I know that I have a book at home that I once gave a lecture on, you know, Passover Seders in remote countries. And it was very interesting because, you know, people, for example, in Kurdistan, in that part of the world, the Crimea, and, you know, in all those little places, in Bukharia and in Tashkent, and in those areas, they would have a very special custom that they would, you know, actually reenact the entire Seder. They would have a person come to the door, knock on the door, you know, and they would scream, "Who's there?" and "It's a visitor," and "Where you're going?" "I'm going to Jerusalem," and they would have a whole conversation. They would come in, they would all get dressed up, and they would put the bags over their shoulders like the hobos we have today, you know, in the television, and they would go take a walk down the street, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this way they would have an entire, I mean, it was beautiful. I could just see it happening in front of our eyes. They're really getting into it, and then they would take a goat, and they would slaughter it, and they would it was the whole 9 yards, and they would do whatever. So to them it was a wonderful, beautiful experience, and I'm sure that especially if you have Jews from other countries, you know, you would want to invite them. Okay, you'd want to invite them to share their own experiences with stories in their own communities, and that leads us to number 14, which is actually reenact part of the Passover story. It wouldn't hurt if you got up there and, you know, you had children, and one of them could be Moses, and you put a little thing on his head and with a thing, and you could have Miriam and a little tambourine. She could be playing, and the girls could be following her, and the boys could be following Moses. And then you walk there, and you pour some water on the floor, and get your carpets dirty, and they walk through the water, and the water splits, and everything is like that, and they get into a fight. Who goes first, the women or the guys? You know, it's always good to, you know, to do something like that. But you could well imagine that the experience of your guests, if you were able to pull something like this off, would enhance their experience. They would love seeing something like that, which leads me to get gadgets. You know, buy some props. You go to any store, Ben, you're on the street, they have only like these little recreations of the 10 plagues, where, you know, they have like blood drops, you know, little frogs, you know, lice, all of these things. And when you mention the word frogs, you like drop the frogs in the middle of the table, or you throw the lice on the table, or, you know, girls, you boil one on the table. You do all of these things. Then you go, "Oh no, look at that!" You got them, you have them. You know, or if you're very creative, you make them yourself. Don't spend money, make them yourself. And darkness, you turn off, you can't turn off the light because it's yontif. But, you know, you get darkness and the killing of the firstborn, you grab your oldest son and start choking him, or something like that, which I plan to do this year, actually, to my son Yankee. No, but, you know, all of that stuff. So, you know, you make it real, make it feel like it's happening, and throw them in the middle of the table. It's again, the two more popular ones are frogs and grasshoppers, because they actually look like something. I don't exactly know what a boil looks like. You know, what are you going to make a boil, or pestilence, or hail? But, you know, but frogs, and certainly frogs and grasshoppers, you can easily make and throw them on the table. Not live ones, I'm going to talk about fake ones. You know, I mean, you're going to go to the end of the earth to find live grasshoppers and let them loose in your house. Good luck to you. But, you know, but all this does is it gets a chuckle out of everybody, and everyone says, "Oh, look at this, these people are crazy. I'm never coming back to the Seder because they're crazy people," you know, all of that stuff. But that just enhances. Part of the whole idea is to get people chuckling, laughing, and talking. And the more you reenact, the more you recreate, the more you're creative about it, the more people are going to want to come to your Seder. All right, we've been dealing with 39 ways and how to enhance your Seder and make this a more meaningful experience for you and for your guests. When we went through number 14 already. We'll pick up the pace because we know that it's a weekday night and people have to get home to help their spouses clean for Passover. I just want to start off the second part of this lecture with a little story. All right, we start off the first one, and it tells us, if you remember in Genesis early on, when God was talking to Abraham, God said to Abraham, Abraham, your children are going to be exiled for 400 years. He tells them they're going to be foreigners in a foreign land for 400 years. And after 400 years, they're going to actually return to the land of Israel. All right? So we have always had this tradition that Jews were in Egypt for how long?
40 years.
400? No. In Egypt, not in the desert. How many years? 400 years. We know that 400 years. Okay. So, but there's a little problem. Because if you take all of the people that lived in Egypt, and we know the generations in Egypt of Moses and his father and his grandfather, you find that the Jews were in Egypt much less than 400 years. They were only there 210 years. From the year they walked in to the year that they left, they were only in Egypt 210 years. All right? So we have now kind of this question. Why did God say 400 years and the Jews were only in Egypt 210 years? So we answer this question by talking about the role of women within Egypt. Why do I say that? Because it tells us in the Talmud that B'schus Noshim Tzidkonis Niklu Aviseinu Mitzrayim. It was in the merit of the righteous women that the Jews in Egypt were redeemed. Because of the righteous women. It wasn't because of the guys. No matter what they did, it was the women that got us out of Egypt. How so? So in kind of a funny way, they say that the women went to God and said like this, listen God, we know that we need to be here for 400 years. Let us out after 210 and we'll make them feel like it's 400 years. We'll make our husbands feel like it's 400. All right? So we see, so that's how we reconcile the difference between the 210 and the 400 because the women made it seem like it was 400. Okay. I don't say that in front of my wife, of course. I can only say it here because if I say it in front of my wife, she'll make me feel like it was actually 400 years. But here's a perfect opportunity to talk about the women's role within Judaism. Because many times people get the misconception within traditional Judaism that the women are second class or whatever it is, they're not appreciated. Believe me, it's such a misconception, and we all know, so it gives us a good opportunity to talk. And if you really want to sound like a scholar, I'll tell you something that most people do not know. And you're going to sit around your Seder and you're going to thank me for telling you this. And this is worth at least 250 of the 5. When you study the story and you go through the Exodus of Egypt, you will notice that at the end when they cross the Red Sea, there are 2 camps that open up with a song. One is Oz Yashir Moshe. Moses opens up with a song. And then who else opens up with a song? Miriam. Miriam gathers the women and she opens up with a song. If you study the text very carefully, you'll notice that there are slight differences in the story. Moses sings, the Jews sing, fine, great, and they do a dance and they go home. With the women, it says that Miriam took the tambourines and the drums and they were dancing with it. And the first question was, where do you get tambourines from? Well, in the middle of the desert, you find tambourines. What is a tambourine store? A music store, what, in the middle of the desert? So it says no, because the women believed that they were going to get out. The guys, they were cynical. Till the last very moment, the men were very cynical. They said, yeah, we'll go, we won't go. Yeah, Moses. You know, they didn't. Moses said, we'll go. The women, the moment Moses came to say we're going to be redeemed, they already went into action. They made tambourines, they made drums. They were waiting and they were waiting anxiously for the day of redemption. That's why they had tambourines prepared, because it was the women in their hearts knew that the moment of redemption is going to. And this is so true if you study religion. We know for a fact, there's no doubt about it, that women are innately more spiritual than men. That without question. Now, of course, there's exceptions to every rule. There are going to be some women who are just going to be secular, but women innately are more spiritual than men. And that's why Miriam led the tambourine group, because they believed they were the believers. And that's why it says, because of the righteous women, our forefathers were redeemed from Egypt. So this is a perfect time to talk about the importance of of the role of women within Judaism. Talk about a Jewish name, but of course that only works if people have Jewish names. If they don't have any Jewish names, forget about it. But one of the reasons why it says we got out is because people still kept their Jewish name. Aaron, Moshe, although his name was really Egyptian, but then other Jews that had Jewish names, and they kept it, they didn't assimilate and take on the Egyptian's name. Unfortunately, I'm a Holocaust survivor's kid, so I had to put it in. Number 18 is, Vihi Sheyamna is a prayer that we say near the end of the service. It talks about how in every generation they come to get us. It's not a very happy prayer, but it's a realistic prayer, and how God saves us from every generation. Of course, the tragedy of the past generation was the Holocaust. Unfortunately, more and more Holocaust survivors are passing away by the year. They're getting older and they're moving on. And God forbid, before you know it, long before you know it, and I wish my mother, David's mother, and all they should have a richas yonim v'shonim tovos. They should have a long life. But realistically, we know that in a decade or so, we're not gonna have many Holocaust survivors. Elie Wiesel is about the youngest Holocaust survivor, and he's about 75 already. Think about it. If you were born in 1945, you're already 60 years old. That's if you were born in the year that you were liberated. You're already 60. So it's a good chance that in several years. So we have to, again, it's not very pretty, and it's not very exciting, and it's not very joyous, and it's not even really a time for the Chag. But being as a Holocaust survivor's kid, we need to tell our children again, Zachor, remember and never forget. Never forget, and of course we talk about the state of Israel, at that time, the significance of Elijah's cup and the coming of Mashiach. Even if you're not a believer in the traditional concept of Mashiach, even if you don't believe that a man is going to come and going to redeem the Jewish people and take him to Israel, the way Maimonides sets it out, which is the traditional belief that a Mashiach is going to come, even if you don't believe that, we all hope for a better world. We hope for a messianic age. We hope that one day, peace is going to reign supreme. Doesn't everybody want that? Doesn't everybody dream about that and pray for that? So that's a perfect time when Elijah represents the forerunner, the announcer, the precursor of the coming of Mashiach to kingdom, and how each and every single one of us has to live a life like Mashiach is coming. Like I often tell my children, live your life as if Mashiach was coming today. You know what? If you believe that, you would live completely different. There's a famous story of a rabbi who got lost on the highway and found himself being invited into a monastery with Benedictine monks. And they were very nice to him, and they put him up, through this snowstorm or whatever, and he spent a week with the monks together. As he left the doors of that monastery, he looked at them and he said, I see the Messiah is among you. And that was because they said to him, Rabbi, please bless us. They saw that he was a very special person. And he said to them, I see that the Messiah is among you. And with those words he left. Do you know what he accomplished with that? What did he do? He made sure that everybody's going to treat everybody with respect. Because you never know who is the Messiah. It could be him, it could be him. So he made sure that from that day on, they each treated each other with respect, because you never knew who the Messiah actually was. And that's how we need to live our lives. And again, it's once again going back to Steve's question about values, just reiterating that concept again of really separating the doers from the avoiders. The people that are going to get involved and people who are just going to sit by the wayside. Because don't forget, evil, and you could use this line, evil will only prosper when good people do nothing. That's what it's all about. A Hitler could only come around if the good people sit on the wayside and do nothing. And the famous words of I forgot his name, there was a famous bishop, Bonhoeffer or something, who wrote, when they came for the Jews, I did nothing because I wasn't Jewish. When they came for the communists, I did nothing because I wasn't a communist. When they came for the homosexuals, I did nothing because I was not homosexuals. When they came for the Seventh-day Adventists, I did nothing for the Seventh-day Adventists. And when they came for me, there was no one left to speak up. So you could, always reinforce values in that way, although it's much easier to do it in a positive way, but we understand. Dayenu was always a good song, we could sing it and discuss it. Discuss why Moses' name is not in the Haggadah. Do we know why Moses' name is not in the Haggadah? If you look all through the Haggadah, his name is not even mentioned once, which is not true. It is mentioned once, but it's only mentioned in a very separate, in a casual way. It quotes a verse from Yeminu B'Hashem. The Jews believed in God and Moses, but besides that, it doesn't even mention his name once. That God said that. Think about it. He is the hero of the whole story, the one who gave of life and soul. And why is his name not mentioned in the Haggadah? Because we specifically didn't want him to become the focal point. Who took us out of Egypt? Who? God. Not Moses. God took us out of Egypt, not Moses. See, where Moses became the hero. God didn't want that. God wanted that I'm the main player. Moses was an instrument. And that's why his name, think about that, about the whole idea of humility. About how humble Moses had to be, not to have his name in the Haggadah. And then you play a bunch of games there, whole or half matzah. You know that game? You crack a piece of matzah, you put it together, and you ask everybody whole or half, and they have to guess if it's whole or half. You buy some filberts, some nuts, and you grab a stack in your hand, even or odd, and then you win the nuts, or you how many nuts are there in a handful. This is already, if your Seder is completely breaking down, and you have absolutely nothing else to say, and you've used your best stories and your best lines, and there's nothing else to do, grab out the filberts, and then you'll start playing with the children, and the rest of the adults will do other things. Play marbles. We used to have a great game of playing marbles with filberts. You roll them against the wall, see who gets closest to the wall. This is all games with, you either have to be over 50 or under 15 to play these. Anybody from 15 to 50 is excluded from playing, playing these games. If you wanted to do a little bit of preparation, before Passover, prepare labels with the name of famous Jewish people, like you'll have, Moshe Dayan or Moses Maimonides, and famous people that people know. You'll write them and you put them on the back of someone. As people walk in, you put them on the back of their jackets. So I walk into the room and you stick on my back, you stick Moshe Dayan. Now I don't know who I am, but I have to figure out by asking questions, is he a contemporary person? Is he a biblical person? This, and therefore, it does two things. One, it keeps people's minds off eating, and two, it actually could teach somebody something. So let's say, if someone doesn't know who Moshe Dayan is, it's a good opportunity to talk about Moshe Dayan. It's a good opportunity to talk about Moses and Aaron. Don't make it too obvious. Don't make it Moses and Pharaoh. Please. But take some famous Jews, Maimonides, Herzl, whatever it is. I don't have to tell you. Get prizes and candies for children. I can't tell you how important that is, because you know what, the kids are going to be doing things, you're going to expect them. You've got to give them out some prizes and candies, and make sure the candies are kosher for Passover. Under each seat, tape instructions for something that the person has to do at the Seder. Everybody sits down at the seat, and then like this guy has to eat a little extra more. So you go, Steve, come on, eat some more, do all of that stuff. And of course, if you know where the things are, then you'll put the people in the appropriate position. If the guy with the worst voice, you're going to have them sit where they have to sing a song. You know that. So just to make fun of them, because we all love people, humiliating people. That's one of the pastimes that Jews just love. So we want to humiliate as many people as we can at the Seder. So you'll put Uncle Harry, who couldn't carry a tune, if it was in a bucket, he couldn't carry a tune, halfway down the hall. So you put him at a place where he's going to sing Dayenu by himself, and he's going to, no, but come on, Uncle Harry, you got the Dayenu, it was God's will that you should be sitting in that seat. Come on, give us a rendition. Of course, he's going to sing it so often, everyone's going to laugh, and we'll all have a good time at the expense of poor Uncle Harry. But hey, who cares? It's all about us having a good time, right? Who cares how many people we humiliate in life? It's always about self-aggrandizement, about self-appreciation. So why not? Let's humiliate. I'm just joking. I see Marcus looking at me, thinking, the rabbi cracked up. What's he talking about? He's thinking, what did I pay my $5? He wants a refund already. No, I'm just joking. I'm being facetious when I say about humiliation. But all of these things should be done in love and in care. But it could enhance. If someone's gonna say, "Oh, you eat more rice? Are you crazy?" or something like that, or drink an extra cup of wine, or do something like that. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was a game popular several years ago. It's still hanging out there, and I had a lot of fun with it during the Seders. You create a list of questions, and whoever gets the questions, they get another piece of whatever it is. I don't have to go. Family Feud. You have two different plays. Now again, you have to have people who are. By Jews, this is a natural, because all families are feuding. So, you know, if you have a couple of families there and they're fighting with each other, it's always a great time to enhance the feud among the families. You know, make sure that you tell all the politics that happen, a little secret here, how Uncle Harry hates Aunt Alice, you know, and all of that stuff. And you just get everybody cooking and blood, you know, and then that's all the fun of a Seder. You want to make sure that people leave your Seder angry at each other, and you've accomplished something.
So
what?
When are we?
Never, never. You only have to do one of these 39 things, by the way. You don't have to do one thing. You know, you play Passover bingo, give each person a bucket of objects to use when saying the 10 plagues. I mentioned that before. Make Passover cards and play memory. That's for little children. You know, all these little things. Sing the Manishtan in as many languages. We once had visitors from Holland, and they sang it in Dutch. You know, it's just kind of cute. It was a little different. If you have somebody that's from out of the country, you can make it anything but French. Don't have them sing it in French. You know, forget about French. You know, you get a biblical map of Exodus and show points of interest from Exodus till entry of Israel. That's if someone could do that. I mean, if you could actually accomplish that and show the people how close it was, because it took us 40 years to get there, and the Israeli army 3 days in 67. I mean, think about that. You know why? Because in 67 they had a good route. You know, they just shot straight forward, you know, to the Suez Canal. It took us 40 years because Moses wouldn't ask for instructions, for directions. He got lost and they wouldn't, absolutely refused to ask for directions. He was a male and no, we'll get there. Don't worry. Moses, please ask. No.
No, Rabbi, it was not that. It was something else.
What
he
was
was stuttering. He meant
Canada. He meant Canada. Oh, yeah, that's right. I've always said Canada is the Holy Land. The holy country. Yeah.
It's too cold to be hungry.
It's too cold down here. No. You can organize a matzo ball race. I don't know even what that is, but it sounded good. A matzo ball race. Buy several types of wine and have a wine tasting contest, or at least discuss several types of wine. Now you can, for those who were at the wine tasting event, we know that there's wines from all different continents and all over the place. You know, Jewish wine has come a long way, baby, as they say in that commercial. You know, it's unbelievable with Jewish wine. When I was a kid, there was only Malaga and the Concord and the thickest, heaviest, sweetest wines. And then, of course, growing up in a Lubavitch community, people would make their own wine. Now, my father, God bless his soul, he was, you know, he wanted to appease the rabbi and do everything the rabbi said. So he bought this wine that was homemade. Oh my God! I mean, it was vinegar. It was, and he would drink 4 cups religiously, and I would say, how could you drink that? And I went to him, black and white, and I would take a sip, and wow! So now today you got white, and you got dark, and you got semi-sweet and semi-dry and very dry and eminent dry, and you got all different types of Jewish of wines. And talk about why we drink the 4 cups of wine, because it talks about the four expressions of salvation in the Torah. That's why we need 4 cups of wine, and just talk about how wine enhances everything. And last but not least, prepare Passover stories and tell them at critical, dull moments in time. You know, so get a couple of stories, tell a couple of jokes, you know, about, you know, this and about that. It doesn't have to be specifically about the Passover jokes. It could be any type of Jewish jokes. You know, it doesn't have to be even Jewish jokes. Just anything that's gonna liven up the crowd. The main thing to remember of all of this is that going into this, as you put in, that's what you're going to take out. That's the whole key to this entire thing. A couple of do's and don'ts, and then we're going to just let everybody go. Do start preparing early enough. Make sure your house is sparkling clean and your table as beautiful as possible. Invite a guest from someone as far. Do that. Do have uniform agad, as we mentioned, with good translation and perhaps transliteration for everyone at the table, in order that all can participate in the Seder without difficulty. We mentioned that. Do plan different wines, especially Israeli wines, for the 4 cups. You want to place a saucer under each cup to prevent excessive stains on the tablecloth. Okay, we know that. Arrange a cushion or pillow for the master of the house so you can recline on. Do remember to provide an appropriate small reward for the children who find the Afikoimen. We do that. Do suggest that one of the children prepare a talk for the Seder on freedom. You know, if you have someone who can do it. Don't rush through the Seder. Do not. It is a time that is being invested in your family and a family tradition for future generations. Plan ahead. Do use attractive different Pesach set of dishes if you have, etc., etc., etc. I think we went through everything. We prepared, and godliness, the children, the props, to explain everything, the participation, the acting out, to let everyone remake this Seder, play when they're prepared, to let the story, let the children hide the afikomen, all of these things. I think, have we gotten anything out of this? I mean, at least a couple of different ideas that at least could enhance our Seder. Remember, one other rule which is hard for me to also integrate: have fun. That's the main thing. If it doesn't work out the way you might have spent 3 or 4 days preparing, and it turns out to be a big dud, your props, don't get nervous. Don't scream at your wife. Don't bellow at your guests. Don't scream. Don't pout. Don't run into your room and lock the door. Everything is gonna work out. Everything will be okay. Remember those guys that used to be on KABC in the morning, Ken and Bob? They used to say egg bug. Everything is going to be okay. Don't worry. So have fun. Remember, education, I believe the best teachers are those teachers that understand that education is something we smuggle into our children. First, we give them a good time. We smuggle in the education. While they're thinking they're being entertained, we teach them actually something. And this is so much true for a Seder. So don't get overly nervous and don't get stressed out if you don't follow all 39 things. But Rabbi Perelmuter said we have to make props, and you didn't make any props. You know, and did you make the things for under the chairs? And we went to the lecture, we spent $10 putting things under the chair. And you're going to get nervous, and Friday's going to be a shouting match, and Saturday you're going to run out of the house tearing your hair because you don't have the things under the chair, or you don't have this. Please. These were only suggestions. These are not Moses' commandments from heaven. Remember, there's a big difference between suggestions and don't commit adultery, right? That you should never do under any circumstances. Not having things under your chair you can pass over. Thank you. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them at this time, because otherwise you're on your own. I will not be there with you Saturday night and Sunday night when you're running the Seder.
Well, next year I'm going to rent you for the rabbi for my Passover, so you better book it. What do you charge?
Oh, you couldn't afford me. It's
worth
if
it.
you have to ask, you can't afford.
I can afford it.
It's a blank check. It's a blank check, and let me fill it in.
It's worth
it. It's worth it. No, listen. It's. You also have to. We didn't even talk about this tonight, but it's also expectations. You see, we think that we're all going to get Elie Wiesel's around the table, and we're going to have these miraculous, deep philosophical questions, and we're all going to enjoy with. You're not going to have Elie Wiesel's around the table. You're not going to have great storytellers around the table that are going to be able to sit there like the Baal Shem Tov could sit for 8 hours, and the students would listen to him passionately, and they would sing. It's not going to happen. So also understand your expectations. If you could have one good discussion, say one good round robin of discussion for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, dayenu. You've accomplished it. You don't have to have the whole night stimulating talk. Who's this? Who has that? You know anybody that has that stimulating talk for hours after hours? You're not going to have these people around your table. So just understand who your crowd is. Try to better the environment, and just go with the flow and just have fun at it and just feel good. The more you enjoy it, the more they're going to enjoy it. But if you're going to get nervous at the kids running around, you're going to get nervous at people sitting there with a blank stare on the face, so be it. There are people that are immovable objects. As much as you try to get them involved, they're just not interested. They're there out of obligation.
Greeks in a sukkah.
There you go. A yavon in a sukkah. Now do not tell that at the national. Lose that expression at the National Greek Festival here. Lose that expression. Lose it. You know, and just understand that there are some people that are there only under duress because they have to be there. So imagine if I had to go to a convention that talked about widgets. I'd sit there, you know, the judge, I did something wrong, you know, I sped, and the judge said, gave me a chance. Either pay your parking ticket or go to a discussion on how to make software. You know, I mean, something that I could care less about, you know? Okay, so I'd sit there, and you can imagine me sitting there, right, like this, you know. and nothing the guy is going to say, and nothing the guy is going to joke is going to make me happy for being there, because I have to be there. What?
It's like driving school.
That's it. It's like driving school. You sit there and it's painful and you get through it and you go home, and that's the way it is. And that's absolutely no judgment. It's not a judgment on what you do, because you could have prepared and you could present it in the most beautiful way, and there's still going to be people, just like I get up here on the high holidays and I think that, oh, what I just said was so brilliant that me and Moses together, we couldn't have said it any better. I probably said better than Moses because he was a stutterer. But you know what? Me and we're the best. I mean, this is brilliant. And there's still people in the crowd that look at me like I'm a goat. Understand me? Like, why are you up there? And why am I here? And that's so that's the way it goes. So just go with the flow, have fun, and just enjoy yourselves. I mean, these were just a couple of suggestions to make it more interesting and more enjoyable as you get through the evening. But just go for it. Just have fun, like everything else in life. The attitude that you bring to the table is going to be the attitude that you're going to take home. Any other questions?
Rabbi,
Yes.
my grandfather, at the end of the Seder, would go to each one of the grandchildren.
Right.
And he'd say, I got you, you got me. And then he'd say something very nice and pleasant about us individually, give us a kiss on the cheek, and go on to the next child.
Yeah, that's a beautiful. That's a grandpa.
Yeah.
That's a grandpa. Yeah, a father usually would beat you over the head with a hammer, and then No, that's it. Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
Why do we sing Haggadah?
Why do we sing Haggadah? It's an interesting thing because we don't sing it. In Chabad, it's out of the Haggadah. We don't even sing the Haggadah. But
Why?
because it's different customs that have grown up throughout the ages. If you notice, if you take different Haggadahs from different regions in the world, some have this prayer, some don't have this prayer. It's not because Haggadah is really an addendum to the Haggadah. It's a song that you sing afterwards, like Echad Miyadeya, Haggadah, Adirhu, all of these songs that do it. Haggadah talks about God running the world. At the end of Haggadah, the last thing is God in heaven who slayed the this, who slayed the that. So what does it show? It shows about Hashgacha Pratis. It talks about divine providence. And the reason why we got out of Egypt is why? Because of divine providence, and that's why the Haggadah is important to sing. But as my friend told me, that his grandfather, who became a Chabad Chassid, was not, he went to the previous Rebbe and he says, what should I do? My whole life I sing Haggadah. So if you sing Haggadah, what's the big thing?
What I did real quick is, no one in our family can sing, especially me.
Yeah.
I got a tape, I'm leading the service, and I push when it came to Dayenu, I push it and it blasts, the tape.
Oh, Danny K.
Yeah.
Why do you have Danny K sing Dayenu? I'm sure you could find it somewhere. You have pushed the
But I
tape.
have all the songs, when I go to
Yeah.
the service, did the prayer for the
That's not
unless Neil's over, then we do it. Not,
Yeah,
we use
right.
it.
The only thing is I just have to make comments since we are an Orthodox congregation. It's not traditional to do that. Because you can't do that.
I do that, yeah.
But hey, whatever works for
You
your
don't
house.
understand my house.
Whatever works for your house. If you need a tape, go for it.
I don't want it.
If you want to show a video, hey, today everything is video, video things. So you want to show a video during the Seder, hey, go for it. Have Danny K sing Haggadah, whatever it is. Whatever turns the people on. All right?
Okay.
Do we have enough for it? Enough? Okay. Let's get back to cleaning and scrubbing.